Good day and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. In this video we're going to be going through the patch notes and changes for Death Knights in the War Within Season 2. We'll be discussing some of the changes overall, as well as obviously how I think they'll go throughout Season 2. Now I already did a video on which tanks and DPS specs I think will be really good going into Season 2, but this is more an in-depth class by class guide. So we'll start with Death Knights. So the developers do put a note here that currently Frost and Unholy Death Knights are incredibly survivable. Generally speaking, they're super tanky. They're hoping to reduce that a little bit, but they actually still want them to be tanky. We'll see if that's the case. I do know that Frost and Unholy were super duper tanky for DPSs. Like super duper tanky and still could do decent damage. A lot of the times they were literally rivaling tanks for how defensively sound they were. So we'll have to see if they've managed to kind of somewhat remedy that to a certain extent. In terms of single target damage, based on kind of the DPS logs and everything from Noxic, Frost DK, generally speaking, and Unholy DK, generally speaking, we're okay in terms of damage. Frost DK ranked in about 13th in terms of single target kind of damage. Unholy DK was incredibly good at single target damage, being around about 2nd in terms of real performance at a very high item level. In terms of kind of AoE, Frost DK then really started to kind of be a bit better, being one of the top 5 ranks. So Unholy is your more single target spec, Frost DK is your more AoE target spec. So yeah, Blood DKs, just basically flat boost of 20%. No other changes to them, and I think this is fine. Blood DKs are incredibly strong. Right now, their tier set bonus for Season 2 is incredibly strong, and I think this is more than acceptable. A change for them. I think it's very fine. Like they mentioned here, it's just to help tanks keep up a little bit DPS. If you played a tank in Season 1, you felt pretty weak. Tanky, but pretty weak in terms of offense. This isn't going to make tanks huge damage dealers, but it is going to help them with just having a better standard of DPS, especially when it comes to just playing as a single player. Now, in terms of Frost, kind of just some flat increases here. All abilities up by 5%, Obliterate up by 20%, Frost Strike up by 15%. This is to help with the single target damage, especially. Rhyme now increases the damage of Howling Blast by 275, was 225. So this is an increase to AoE even further. Breath of Sindragosa damage increased by 10%, pretty big. The big damage or big change here for Frost comes with Veteran of the Third War. That stamina decreased to 12% from 20%. This is pretty big. It's a noticeable difference in your overall health. Now magic, also a bit of a big difference. Both of these obviously also affect you in a PvP circumstance. They're going to make you less tanky. Permafrost, generating an absorb shield for 30%, not 40%, all kind of reducing your tankiness a little bit. Obviously, each singular change isn't huge, from 20 to 12, 8 to 5, 40 to 30, but when you add them all up, it's quite a big difference. You will feel less tanky. If you think about it, especially in terms of just raw numbers, you should feel around about 30% less tanky, technically. In terms of Unholy, increase of 5%, pretty solid. Soul Reaper damage increased by 35%. This is again helping you a little bit with that single target. Clawing Shadow Strike, Scourge Strike, Gargoyle Strike, Apocalypse School damage, Mages of the Dead damage, Doomed Bidding now summons a Mages of the Dead for 6 seconds, not 8. Commander of the Dead now increases damage of Gargoyle and Army of the Dead by 45, was 35. Apocalypse and Raise Dead now instantly summons ghouls and visuals. You will notice here the abilities that are being buffed kind of stem more on your zoo control kind of Unholy build. So Unholy Pestilence kind of proc dotting build was very strong. going into the end of Season 1. Here they're trying to push you a little bit more into that Ghoul Army of the Dead build to kind of balance things out and give Unholy a bit of an alternative damage spec. So they haven't really kind of punished the Pestilence build, more enabling potentially more of an Army of the Dead Apocalypse style build. And they have the same reduction in tankiness as a Frost. Rider of the Apocalypse, all horseman damage increased by 10%, does not include Undeath and Trollbane's Icy Fury. So this is all really to kind of push that Army of the Dead build, that Ghoul Army of the Dead Apocalypse horseman kind of like zoo kind of crowd control summon build. It's fine, I think, to have this being buffed as an alternative, since they haven't nerfed the Pestilence kind of proc based Unholy build, and I think that's a very good call for them. So I think overall the changes to Death Knight have been good. Frost, they just basically gave a little bit of a touch up to that single target, whilst obviously reducing that stamina, that kind of tankiness that they have. Blood DK, they just did that flat increase, which I think is very good. And then Unholy, they didn't do too much, obviously tampering with the stamina and the tankiness, understandably so, but more just proccing that kind of alternative build function that you see with Unholy not really kind of entering into that lane. Overall, I think these are some very good changes for DKs. I think they haven't messed with any of the classes, and I think they've given them a good foundation to make them still play fun in a good way without tampering what players are used to from Season 1. So overall, I have to say, good day and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. In this video, we're going to be going through the patch notes